This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup for May the 4th, 2015. As usual, there are 6 different free goods, but they are free this week only. So if when you watch this video you find something you might find useful, just be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Links will be in the description of this video. So first up here is 20 winter presets for Lightroom. This is a collection of presets for Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, so you will need Lightroom to use these, and it does include very nice instructions as well in terms of how you install these presets. I actually found those very handy since I'm not a big Lightroom user myself, but once you do that there will be all these different presets inside here, so I'm just going to apply them to the image of this flower right here so you can get a better idea of how these actually look applied to stuff. So they're called Pastel Presets Winter because they have a very winterized theme, so I'm just going to click on them and then you can kind of see how these actually look. So this one's called Snow Fun and this one's called Snow Fun 2. As you can tell, these have a pretty pronounced effect on the actual appearance of these flowers right here. This one's white snow and then white snow contrast. And I'm just going to keep on clicking through these right here so you can kind of see how all these look applied. This one has a very pronounced effect on the background. It actually does a really nice job of making this flower pop right here. This one's called Winter Darkness, which is a very nice job once again of putting a great deal of focus on the center of these flowers. This one's called Winter Matte, which just mattes everything out, but it's nice and bright. And I'm going to keep on going down here. This one's called Winter Storm, which is black and white, and here's a second version of that. And then Winter Sun, and then Winter Colors, so once again we have a nice vibrant image. And I'm going to go through the last few remaining presets right here. This one has a very cool vintage appearance to it. This one called Winter Day has a pretty strong effect on the colors, and then it darkens the background quite a bit. Winter Haze Soft has a very light and faded look to it. Winter Light does a really nice job of making the foreground objects pop by darkening out the background quite a bit here. This one's called Winter Pink, which has a nice pink overtone to it. Works great on these pink flowers. Last two here are Winter Vintage and Winter Vintage 2. Winter Vintage 2 seems to have quite a bit of a greenish yellow tone to it. So a very cool pack of quite effective Lightroom presets right here. So if you are a photographer who loves using Lightroom, and I know there's quite a few of them out there, you might find this pretty handy. And if you do think you'll find this handy, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is Vignette Typeface. This font is provided in OpenType font format, and I have it opened up inside Adobe Illustrator here to show it. So up at the top here are the lowercase variants of the letters. Even though these look like they're uppercase letters, if you type in lowercase, this is how it will appear. And right here are the uppercase variants of the letters. I'm actually going to throw out the tracking just a little bit here so you can see these individually a little bit better. There is still some overlap though. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer on these lowercase letters just so you can see how these look up close. They're very smoothly rendered and everything looks nice and clean. So it looks like some time was definitely spent making sure all these letters look very smooth and well executed. And if you notice something else on these letters right here, these lowercase letters, the ones on the end, the N and the Z, have these cool swirling elements. This will happen to whatever letter happens to be on the end. So if I put an A or a B, you can tell that it automatically generates this swooping swoosh right here, which I think is a super cool bonus to this particular font. It adds a very nice custom and professional touch to these letters. So here are the uppercase letters once again. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer. These are a little bit more ornate than the lowercase letters, but they actually work quite nicely in conjunction with them, which I'll show at the bottom here when I typed up Free Goods Roundup, which I'll get to in just a second. So here are the included numbers 1 through 0, everything is in there, as well as a bunch of different special characters shown right here. There's even more than this though, so if I select this, go to type and then glyphs near the top here, and then I'll just scroll down through the included elements. So there's a bunch of different glyphs included, so be sure to check those out as well. And it looked like they also included some different Latin-based accented letters, so if you're speaking a Latin-based language outside of English, these might come in super handy for you. And right here I typed up Free Goods Roundup so you can see how it looks typed out into a sentence. I think this looks super awesome in my opinion. And as you can tell on these lowercase letters right here, all the end letters have these really cool swirling accent marks, and those are automatically generated. So this adds a very nice custom touch that you don't tend to see in a lot of fonts, and I think that's what makes this a really professional and really almost like a must pick up free font in my opinion. And also, as you can see right here, the capital letters do work very nicely with these lowercase versions. When you look at them individually, it looks like the lowercase letters might just dominate the uppercase letters because of the font thickness, but once it's actually typed up into a sentence and then properly sized, it has a very strong appearance in my opinion. So I really enjoy this font and I'd really recommend that you pick it up if you think you might have a use for it. Just be sure to pick it up this week. Next up we have Vintage Sketched Objects and Textures. This pack has a bunch of different assorted items included, and they are provided in Illustrator, EPS, as well as PNG format, so I have them opened up inside Adobe Illustrator here to show them. So this first page is a bunch of hand-drawn bags, and they have some pretty cool patterns inside the bags as well. I actually really like these triangular patterns inside here. If you really enjoy very hand-drawn looking illustrations, there's a bunch of different stuff included, so I'm going to go through everything here just so you can see if you find anything useful for yourself. I also really like the flower drawn on this particular bag. So here's the next page right here, which is a bunch of different elements including arrows, arrows, a very cool, somewhat abstracted horse right here, some feathers. Overall, all these elements look like they're based on a Native American theme. And if I zoom in a little bit closer here, you can kind of get an idea of how the actual illustration style looks. So it has a very rough hand-drawn appearance to it. I'm thinking what happened is that they probably hand-drew all these elements and then perhaps scanned them in and then brought them inside Illustrator here via Live Trace or some kind of similar method that automatically generated these. But it does a very nice job of conveying that hand-drawn feel. So I think these are pretty cool for that aspect. So here's the next page right here, which is a bunch of different boots. Once again, the pattern choices inside these boots is really cool. I like the swirling elements inside this one as well as this boot right here on the side. So there's some strong pattern choices throughout all these elements that are included. And once again, these have a very hand-drawn, roughened looking style to them. So on this page, there's a bunch of different patterns that would also work really well as textural elements if that's something you want to do. These actually look kind of like some textures that I have offered in the past. This one in particular, but I'm just going to scroll through all these different patterns right here that you could either apply to the work as a texture overlay or even as a background element, something like that. I think these are pretty cool and very unique. Like this one right here, I'm just going to zoom in a lot closer. Like this is an incredibly detailed pattern that might get lost if you didn't pay attention to it up close. So obviously a ton of work went into creating this. This must have taken quite a while to draw, and I think the overall end result is pretty cool. So you can either use it small just like this, or you could even use it much bigger so people can really get a good idea of just how much detail there is in these. Now I'm just going to go to the next element right here, which is a very cool, very vintage looking pattern that I think would work really great overlaid on a simple type element or a simple silhouette, anything like that. This would add a very cool, very vintage appearance to it. And here's the last page, which is another collection of patterns right here. So here's a much larger version of that pattern I showed previously, as well as much larger versions of some of the other ones, it looks like at least. And I'm just going to drag this one off to the side right here. Then I'm going to very quickly try to repeat it to see if these seamlessly repeat or not. I actually didn't check before, and it looks like they do. So that's really cool that these seamlessly repeat. So you should be able to make these really big or really small, kind of depending on what you want to do. And I'm assuming that applies for all these 12 ones right here as well. These should all also repeat, so that's super cool to see. But overall, a nice and diverse pack of stuff here from patterns like these that I think I might personally get some use of, especially these ones right here. They have a very neat vintage appearance, and then a nice selection of different illustrations to choose from as well. That kind of makes this a very diverse and hopefully quite useful pack for you to use. So if you liked either the illustrations or the patterns, or hopefully both, be sure to pick this pack up this week while it's still free. Next up is 9 Vector Seamless Patterns. This is a collection of 9 different seamless repeating patterns in both EPS as well as JPEG format, so I have the EPS files opened up inside Illustrator here to show them. And the vast majority of these patterns are based on plant life, particularly cactuses, like the one shown right here. And on this one, I did go ahead and repeat it, just so you can see that this does seamlessly repeat really well. There aren't any noticeable repeating patterns in this. It looks like a very natural and very organic collection of images right here, so this doesn't really have the trademark telltales of a repeating pattern. I think they did a very nice job on this. And if I zoom in a little bit closer here, you can see the illustration style on these is also super well done in my opinion, and the color palette used is really strong. So this is a really cool pack as a whole with a bunch of different stuff. So I'm going to go to the next image right here. So here's another one with a bunch of different cactuses and then plants. And on this cactus in the bottom right here in particular, once again a very strong color palette, and I really like how they rendered this flower on the top of the cactus. I think both the color choices and the rough illustration style work very well. So here's the next one right here, which is some abstracted leaves or branches. A very cool color palette on this one as well. So even if you just want to use this pack as a way of picking out very subdued but effective color palettes, it's certainly something you could use to do that. I think the overall choices throughout these are very strong in that aspect. So here's another one with cactuses as the focus, and as you can tell in the background there are these raindrop elements as well. I really like the color choices in the background, as well as the color choices on the cactuses as well. This one gets a little bit more busy than some of the other patterns, but you could of course just click this and then ungroup it and either remove the cactuses or remove the raindrops from the background if you want to customize this a little bit. So there are 2 different repeating patterns in the set that aren't based on plant life in general. So this is one of them, which is more of a dot pattern. It's a very simple execution right here, but it is a nice repeating pattern. So if you want something a whole lot more simple than the plant life ones, this one might be a good option for you. And here's another one that's based on the cactuses, but this one's a lot more abstract than some of the other cactus patterns in this set. So if you want something a little bit simpler but still cactus based, this is a great pattern to pick out. And right here is the other polka dot pattern, very straightforward in the execution of this one. And if you want to, you can use the white arrow and then just select one of these particular polka dots and then go to select and then same, and then fill color, which will select all of the different fill colors of whatever color object you picked. Then you can double click on the fill and make this something different, like let's say I'll make this white, and it automatically changes everything. So that's a little trick to work a little bit quicker if you want to change the colors here. We're down to the last 2 now. So these are some very nice leafy elements right here Once again, a very strong color palette and a nice and rough hand-drawn appearance to these. I think the illustration style on a lot of these is pretty fun and very well executed. So here is the last one of the bunch, and this actually might be my favorite pattern of the bunch because I really like the color choices of this pink background in combination with these green cacti. And I also think the white plant elements in the background right here are super effective, so I'll just zoom in a little bit closer here so you can get a look at how these work as individual elements. And of course you could just ungroup this and then just select the plant item in the back and then the cactus in the front right here. I'll have to actually ungroup these cactuses again. So if you want to use just like a cactus and then this particular plant item, you could just use these as individual elements and not as an entire repeating pattern if that's something you want to do. But a super cool pack in my opinion that's very well executed. So if you think you might find some use in these different repeating patterns, just be sure to pick this pack up this week while it's still free. Next up is Desert Flora Volume 1. This is a collection of cactus illustrations in both EPS, JPEG, and PNG formats. The JPEGs do have a background, but the PNGs have a transparent background, so if you don't have Illustrator, you might find the PNGs particularly useful. But if you do have Illustrator, that might be the best way to work since you can scale them up as big or as small as you want, and you won't lose any quality. But this is a very straightforward set of just some cactus and then desert plant life illustrations right here. And I'll zoom in a little bit closer on this so you can get a good idea of how these look up close. It has a very simple illustration style, but all the lines are very clean and very well rendered. There aren't any weird bumps or jaggy edges when you look at the different shapes up close. And I also think it's worth noting that the color palette chosen for all these different cacti looks really good. I think these different colors work really well together, and there's a lot of colors used that you might not come to typically expect with a cactus, like these bluish greens instead of a more standard green like some of these other cactuses, as well as the purple needles. But I think the blue and the purple work really well together, so there's some really nice color combinations going on here. But this is a very straightforward pack. If you're looking for some cactuses in vector format, then this is a perfect item for you to pick up. Just be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. And last up is Summer Gone, a one-page PSD template for websites. This is a one-page Photoshop mockup for a website, so this isn't a working website out of the box, but if you do have the right coding knowledge, you could turn it into a website. Or if you're a web designer and you just want a good idea for some different layout mockups or anything along those lines, you might find this pretty useful for you. And also something to note here in the layers palette, each of the different sections is in its own layer, so it's a really friendly Photoshop file to use. So the header is in its own layer, the slider up at the top here is in its own layer. If I open that up, it has different sections for like the navigation, the button, as well as the text. So it is very easy to go in here and customize all this stuff, and all the type shown here also is fully live, so you can go ahead and edit that as well. I haven't downloaded all these fonts, so it'll give me a warning right here, but once you have the appropriate fonts installed, you can change this up to be whatever it is you need it to be. It's really easy to go in there and do that. So I'm just going to scroll down through here so you can see everything that's included. It's a very simple and very straightforward layout that will be really good for almost anything I can think of that you'd want to use it for, whether it's a portfolio site or even a store. Mockups like this that are very nice and straightforward tend to be extremely versatile since you can do pretty much anything with them, since all you really need is some good images and then some good content to put on it. Down here at the bottom section, there's a contact section which appears to be blank, but really this is just where you're meant to put in the name, email, and message forms. So overall, this is a nice and straightforward website mockup for Photoshop. And of course, if you want to move stuff around, like let's say you want the About section to move, you can just drag that particular folder down. So I have it inside the Service section, and if I click on the Service section folder and drag that up here, obviously I need to do some more repositioning, but it's very easy to go in there and make custom edits like that. So you can use this Photoshop document to mock up any order of pages you want. And I also think the color choices for this mockup are very strong, so it's a really nice combination with this kind of coral color and then the dark blacks. It just sets it apart very nicely. So a very nice and very well organized mockup here for Photoshop. And if you are a coder and you can break this apart and make it into a website, that's even a bigger bonus. But let's say you're a designer who wants to learn more about how you actually mock up websites in Photoshop. This is a great place to start. It could be a great way for you to learn how to kind of break up these files, and also a nice way to set up the files so they're friendly for other users to modify in the future. So if you think you'll find this mockup for websites useful, either now or in the future, just be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only, so be sure to check out the description for links for all these different free items. And as usual, if you found this video helpful, please like and favorite, and if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. This video is released every Monday to let you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thank you for watching.